I'm looking at the future. We have one topic on the agenda, discuss leftover ambient to GA discussion from the TOC meeting this week. Does anybody else have any other agenda?
Well, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the board, but that kind of seems like the same thing. If we know what is going to go in GA, I can start working on the board and labeling things as GA.
All right, I'll put it so if we have time, we can discuss that. I assume it has dependency on the other one too anyway, so does that sound good?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
All right. Any other topics? All right, if not, let's jump on to the MBMH2GA doc. So just a recap, I think last time we had each of us gone through what we think is important, and John has been kind of taking everything on the aggregated responses. And I think we had everybody go except Ben and Louis, if I remember correctly. And towards the end of the call, we kind of have a lot of consensus on the must-have on the list. Is that a fair summary since Monday?
That is what happened on Monday, yes. So hopefully people, well, if you have different opinions, now's the time to speak up. I know there's people here that weren't there on Monday. We did get through Ben, by the way. We just didn't get to Louis, who also happens to not be here. So.
Okay. So when we get to Ben, did we document, did we decide? Oh, I think we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, this is the one. Okay. So Ben, are you happy with that? I'm not sure if Ben is here. All right.
He was happy with it on Monday.
Okay, then that's good. And Louis is not here today, right? So we can't get to Louis' item. Now, I guess I'll just open up to see, is this our final must-have list? Because the one Louis have, I think it's nice to have anyway. So I'd imagine it wouldn't make to the must-to-have. So I think the question to the team is, are we happy with the must-have list to approve it? Or is there anything else we are missing?
Shove it.
All right, so I guess
I mean the one we had further discussion was the mutating webhook one. I guess that was the one that Louis has highlighted. So there was consensus on everything except this line was not 100% clear.
Oh yes, that's right. Because this one, even sidecar didn't do it. Is that right?
Well, the sidecar requires mutating webhook configs to work.
That's true. Okay, so you have to have it.
Yeah, sort of an inherent requirement. That's how sidecars exist. Now that we're in a sidecarless mode, we simply carried forward what we had done for sidecars. But we're actually, if you look at it, we're creating mutating webhooks. We're only using the labels on the webhooks. We're never actually doing anything with the webhook. It's a pretty significant security problem. So the idea is to take those two values that we're using from labels and store them elsewhere.
Just saying, Mitch, if there was a security concern, technically you could have a policy that is not allowed to mutate anything and remove EastDuty's permission to do it. It's a terrible solution. I'm just throwing out there that if someone was under a crunch to ship Ambient today with revisions and not have that privilege, it could be done. I don't think that means that we shouldn't fix it or anything. Throwing it out there.
I'm not sure I understand the policy part.
So the issue is that EastDuty has permissions to patch the mutating webhook, but all we care about is the labels on the webhooks. What's in the webhook itself is totally irrelevant. So
yeah,
we remove that permission and the tags would still work and the webhook just wouldn't be used, but which is fine because we don't need it. That's a terrible hack to just have like this resource that's kind of, half-assed there, but thrown out there, it could.
I wouldn't say
Austin, you're muted.
I wouldn't say it's a terrible hack. Removing the HTOD permission to touch mutating webhook or validating webhook is actually a very good security improvement. Would require some tool or some installer or some separate component initializer or whatever to do this job, but it's not something that a mega HTOD should have. I mean, it can be put in a separate container, init something that is not necessarily running all the crap on.
No, I just meant that if it would be better to remove the permission by just not even having any webhooks was all I meant.
Oh yeah, no. Oh, I completely. That's even better. I mean, it's for ambient you don't need, but even for regular Istio, removing it is not a hack. It's a huge improvement in security.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I have a dumb question here. So in ambient mode, we also support sidecars as well, right? Because we're not shipping an ambient mode with just ambient itself. So in that case, if ambient also includes sidecar support, can we actually remove the mutating webhook config though?
No, we could just have an option that's like ambient exclusive or something.
Well, and as I understand it, we don't have any compatibility guarantees between sidecars and ambient for beta, maybe not in alpha. I'm not sure if we have published anything about that at this point.
Okay, so my question is, Mitch, if we want to do Canary upgrade without mutating webhook, are we producing maybe an ambient light profile that just focus on ambient without sidecar? And in that profile, because mutating webhook are not needed, we could fulfill your request potentially.
Yes. Yeah. If we were to put out a profile that was like for handling both sidecars and ambient, maybe it need for like migration from sidecars or other use cases where both are required simultaneously, we would need to do something differently. But like today, we don't, as far as I'm aware, we don't support any of that.
Correct.
Just to be clear, in terms of support, it's just that we label it as alpha. It works pretty decently and we have tests. We're just not claiming it.
Right, and also the installs both. That's the thing. Yeah, so we can't just blindly remove it. So I think Mitch, that's kind of the concern I have, because I know some of our users, especially user in sidecar, they actually started with sidecar, moved to ambient. So this could be important for them. And I know one of our users even still have one part in sidecar with the rest in ambient. So we can't just simply remove the mutating webhook config in that case.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we need a way for those who don't need mutating webhooks to not have them, while retaining the ability for those who do need them to continue using them. Is that a good summary?
That is a good summary. Now the question is this absolutely critical? Because unless we agree that we need to shift an install profile, just focus on ambient.
Yeah, in my mind, like I think this is a very high priority, but I don't see any reason why, if it came down to it, we had done all the other things. We're approaching 1.24. That missing this would mean that we don't ship GA. It's not something we need to do before we go GA because it will be forward compatible, whatever we do here. It has to be because the change will impact sidecars as well. It's been something we've lived with. Is it a opportunity to improve the security posture of ambient relative to sidecars? Yes, that's great. There's other ways to do it as well today. Most people don't do them because they're pretty painful. So I'm not saying that's not useful, but like to me, this is a nice to have category based on that criteria. Just because something is very nice to have doesn't mean we must have it necessarily. It's kind of like our release train policy. If a great feature isn't ready for the release, that's a real shame, but it doesn't mean we should hold the release for it generally, right? It means we
I
should
guess
keep
I
working
think
on it
of it
hard
in-
and get it as soon as possible, right?
I think of it in terms of production security. If I'm looking to roll this out as something that's ready for production in large enterprise, the need for mutating webhook configs, both to install and at runtime, both of those are very concerning.
Okay,
Don't
but
particularly
that applies
production-
to every single EC2 user today, right?
Yes. Well, that applies to sidecar users because you actually need mutating webhooks. Like that's inherent to the design of sidecars. If I've sold you on something that doesn't have sidecars, and then I tell you, oh, by the way, but you still need all of these root permissions that for sidecars, that's kind of problematic.
But we are not saying we don't support sidecar. We're saying that's not necessarily GA as far as sidecar and ambient interrupt, right? Because it was alpha. So I'm very cautious on removing mutating webhook, given I would say at least 50% of the user using ambient are from sidecar today of Istio. So they will be shocked okay, gosh, my sidecar no longer works with this ambient profile thing. And if we do another profile for ambient light, I think user would also be confused. Why are we having two profiles again? So
I think I wouldn't put this in a profile per se, but at the very least, a Helm value that we can set that says like, I'm not supporting sidecars at all in this installation. This is pure ambient. And therefore I don't need mutating webhook configs.
So basically this is just a tension between a UX thing and a control thing, right? We don't want to expose too many options to the normal user, at least while we're in a transitional state. But we want to give power users the ability to turn something off.
Yes.
Doesn't seem unreasonable.
yeah, that seems reasonable. Within the same ambient profile, there's a configuration knob. User can say, look, I'm truly greenfield. I have no interest in sidecar. Go ahead, turn this thing off for me.
Yeah, that would work for me.
Are there other things that would fall into that bundle, like ambient versus ambient greenfield? Like obviously there's APIs and CR install, right? That would be the other thing.
Yeah, there's the CRDs, the webhooks. I don't know, part of the install, like there's not a ton.
Yeah, I mean, it's just those two would be the most impactful in terms of perception, right? But
Yeah, like-
well, I don't know, like the perception, honestly, like the mutating webhook thing is one of the weird things in Easter where the reality is worse than the perception in my mind.
yeah, that's true.
Most people don't care. They should, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah, I guess as a maybe the flag should be the aggregate though, right? We should have like a greenfield flag. Rather
Yeah,
than just
I've always
like
imagined
disable
that, like,
webhook flag, right?
yeah, like today we just have a flag that adds ambient, but we don't have a flag that turns off legacy things. I've always imagined that we would add that and just haven't done so yet.
Yeah.
Okay, then yeah, I would love a disable sidecar flag or something along those lines.
A no legacy flag, Mitch.
Well, that phrase legacy has gotten us into a lot of trouble.
I know. I regret the choice already.
Safe mode.
We can bike shed the name later, but the idea
Yeah.
is that such a thing should exist.
Yes,
We'll also
agreed.
need the bike shed later, like what the new place to store tag data ought to be. Instead of mutating webhook configs and how that works in terms of backwards compatibility for sidecars. But I don't feel like this is probably the right venue to bike shed those decisions. It's just, we need to find something. I can try to put something together maybe for next week.
So I think with John's comment earlier, I think we all agree this can be enabled through a flag and flag to be finalized. I think John's question earlier is still remain. Is this very nice to have? But do we must have this for GA?
I think it's probably in the very nice to have category.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that too.
I kind of disagree. I think it's better to do it properly and not rush it than to. I mean, it's a broader problem of improving the safety of Istio, and it may be better to look at a bigger picture and not rush something.
If we put it in the must-haves, that would be, in my mind, more likely to make it rushed.
Right, because you would land it in alpha, beta first before you GA this function, right? So it seems doesn't make sense. We would promote a feature directly to GA on the release. We're going to implement this. That's kind of my concern. Doesn't mean we don't do it, right?
I mean, Lynn, it's not really a feature, right? It's a disabling of a bunch of existing features. So I want to be careful not to.
Well, you're disabling the feature and enabling the new one, right?
Well, which
because
new?
Safety,
The new one is the alternative way to
Oh, okay.
Tags.
to declare your tags.
Yeah.
I don't want to couple the no legacy with the tags. Those are two different things.
So tags are represented as webhooks, so it's sort of difficult to decouple tags from webhooks.
But you could claim there's no tag supported in no legacy mode, when at least in the initial iteration of it or something.
So I don't think that it's necessary that whatever the replacement tag thing is be GA with everything else. If you look at the moment, tags are beta in sidecar mode. So I'm not super worried about the maturity of the tag replacement. Simply that we're able to use Ambient without mutating webhooks. A tag replacement exists at some degree of maturity. Maybe it's alpha. That's fine.
But Mitch, why does it make sense that the core feature moving to stable is blocked on the existence of an alpha feature?
Because the core feature's security is compromised by the lack of existence of that feature.
Right, but you're saying the only way that it's acceptable to use this feature is to enable the alpha feature, which means that the feature is not GA at all. It's alpha, right? Your stability is the lowest. It's not the max.
So the execution of Istio-D and of your Helm chart without root privileges to the cluster, or at least with slightly different root privileges in terms of net raw, etc., is GA.
Yes.
If you'd like to use tags with that, the tags are some lower level of maturity.
Okay. There's no need for tags to exist at all in the GA. They're not even GA'd in sidecars, right? There's no. The whole argument that we've made with the rest of the features is that there's a set of the core set that's GA and a bunch of other features that are not coupled to that GA, right? So I don't get why we're saying that adding a new alpha feature is a prerequisite for a different group of unrelated features going to stable. Like there's many alpha features we want to add to Ambient. I don't see why any of those would block the GA or why this one is any different from them. Like why not add VM support going to alpha as a prerequisite for Ambient going to GA, for example?
Well, does VM support being in alpha resolve security problems for Istio-D?
If maybe your VM wasn't secured, now it is.
No,
No, like it doesn't. Like I get that, but
Istio-D, like this is Istio-D is the core of Istio and it's running insecurely.
So what you're saying is that
data feature that is implemented insecurely.
You're saying that in order to use tags, which are a pre-GA feature, I need to introduce security risk. So if we want to say that, then I'm fine with saying the GA will not support tags. Then we can later go add tags in a secure manner. What we're saying is the equivalent of VMs exist today and they have a security vulnerability in Istio-D. So therefore, we need to promote VMs more when this actual solution should be to turn off VMs in the GA until they're secure, right?
Okay, I see the point. I think what's important is that you can install it without mutating webhooks. I think that's like the
Okay.
P0, so to speak.
Now, John, are
Um,
you okay with that? I think just having a flag to disable sidecar feature, including mutating webhook config, and we can decouple that from the Canary upgrade. So this could be maybe a feature here. Nothing related to Canary upgrade.
Yeah, I'm fine to add a new mode that is an ambient whatever mode, and that will have some caveats on what features it supports.
I do think that we should discuss what the upgrade experience looks like outside of tags, and whether that's sort of like a viable thing to say it's production ready. But overall, like I said, the important thing was the security posture, so I am happy with that.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, Michi, so you're happy with having this flag and solve your concern on the mutating webhooks. And then as you guys were talking, I moved the tag replacement for Canary upgrade, could be alpha down to nice to have based on our discussion. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
So I think, Lynn, I think we want to maybe create some graded buckets, like nice to have and very nice to have.
All right.
Like I would generally agree with Mitch, like tag replacement for Canary upgrade, or just Canary, like a Canary upgrade mechanism is nicer to have than, let's say, a formal third-party security audit. It's more practical, right?
So move this to very nice to have.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. So let's focus on must have, Louis, then we can come back to nice to have and very nice to have. So the only thing left, Mitch, in your bullet here, I just want to make sure, we review this one since Louis raised concern on this whole bullet here, is the single best practice for multi-revision upgrade. Is there anything more we need to do other than I remember you were working on that. I think your PR might already be merged. So
yeah, I think we have some docs work there, but I don't think there's any technical work. Costin and I took an action item that Costin and I haven't reached out to you at all about yet, probably 3 weeks ago, to talk about like proactively how you ought to use revisions and tags. So that will be helpful. It'll be applicable to both sidecars and ambient, so I don't know if that should be considered blocking or not, but it is work that needs to get done in the near future and that I hope to get started on.
There is a document in review on the other working group, I believe, on putting a gateway in front of the revision in front of HDOD, which kind of addresses a lot of those concerns, and it's already possible. There is nothing in that document that is not already possible if you follow it. And that allows basically even for L4 ambient, which we're discussing in the side thread, you can have the new HDOD get 1% or very specific connections from nodes, and you break just few nodes, not everything. So there are many use cases that are solved by putting a gateway in front of HDOD.
but these we don't necessarily even have for sidecars. Am I missing?
No, it works for sidecars as well. I mean, it replaces the use of the mutating webhook for selecting a control plane. You basically, well, there is a change that is required to put a header in the requests to identify, so you can do some stickiness, but having a gateway, you can do whatever you want without. I mean, webhook, everything can go to the gateway, and then it can be shifted wherever we need.
Yeah, that's a really innovative design doc, and I think it's something that we should be considering. I wouldn't consider any of that a blocker for GAing ambient, and I'm not actually clear how it would work for ambient in terms of like Envoy proxies and the like. So I think we've got some work to do there. When I see canonicalize a single best practice for multi-revision upgrade, I see more along the lines of, here's how to structure your tags and revisions. Right now, we've put them out there as tools without any explanation how to use them. It'd be good to put some explanation of like, hey, if you have like a rapid and a stable tag, you can move them from one thing to the next and have rollouts that are really easy to roll back, etc. John?
Yeah, I just like logistically, I'm just concerned about the requirement to both drop mutating webhooks and to have this as must-haves. Because if we go through a standard feature progression of a new feature, it needs at least 2 releases to go to GA. Like if I develop it today, it goes alpha in 1.24, and then aggressively we go alpha to GA in 1.25. But more realistically, it's 3 releases, alpha, beta, GA, right? So this one feature draws the entire ambient 6 months delay on GA. Is there a way around that I'm missing, or is that something that we're...
No, I think this is very nice to have, John. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
I kind of move it under
okay,
as
we just moved
we're
it.
talking, because me to talk about related to tags, since tag is nice to have, and this is related to using tags to do best practice.
Okay. So we just have the flag to disable stuff.
Okay, assume Mitch, that's good with you too. I think I saw your thumbs up from you. So.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
this is...
this is a docs. Well, in my mind, I think I wrote this sentence. I'm not certain it was mine. I think it was. In my mind, this is more about docs. Costin's idea for sort of reimagining how all of that works is really cool. We should be looking into it, but I think it's way too far out to talk about in terms of an ambient GA.
Which it works. It's not far out. It's something that is possible today. Google has been have a gateway in front of our. It's not nothing new here. It's just describing what users can already do.
Yes, I don't mean far out in terms of like it'll take years to build a prototype. I simply mean that we would need to take that sort of POC and design all the way through the feature maturity process, and so that will land far too late for us to really consider blocking ambient GA on it, I think.
Okay, but what we are effectively saying right now, I think, is that what will be GA is in-place upgrade, right? Right.
In-place revision-based upgrade where you relabel everything would still work.
Okay, so we should just make that clear that those are the 2 GA upgrade modes.
But those are we already have, if I'm not mistaken, which is why it's not documented here, Louis. I was just going to the doc. I think Mitch, you already updated. So yeah, so we already have docs on using revisions right now.
Well, it uses tags as well.
Question, do we still have the in-place upgrade docs, or did those get removed when we added these?
Great question. Mitch, I'll let you say.
Yeah, I think John had said he wanted to add an in-place upgrade that was going to be like a second tab on this doc or something.
Okay. We had them before, but I guess we need to add it as a tab. So we can communicate.
Okay, then let's just finalize documentation for revision/label-based upgrade and in-place upgrade. I would just break it out in a separate bullet. Oh, it's under doc improvements.
Yeah, right. There's a separate doc for bullet. I can put in multiple bullets on the doc.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
All right. Oh, so Louis, we called your name before you joined, but your stuff are nice to have. Do you want?
Yeah, no. Like when I was looking through, I didn't actually see anything I wanted to add other than the nice to have, which we kind of talked about, the no legacy and minimizing the API surface by not installing the CRDs. Right. So I would just make a note that's tied back to the disable sidecar or no legacy flag.
Okay.
But clearly not required for GA.
All right, awesome. So let's go through the must-have again and see if anybody have any concerns or questions or comments. Now is a good time.
Could we talk about testing gaps? Do we think there are any key testing gaps? Other than testing the things that are listed here, are there things that are not listed here that we think have a testing gap?
I mean, we've had a lot of users kicking the tires on the Ambient channel, so
Yeah, I mean, we have the two to three production users validated, right? Which obviously
yeah.
is like the ad hoc testing. I meant more like automated systemic scenario end to end.
The one thing that's called out here is the version skews. I think that needs more, but
Okay.
that's the only thing I can see.
If it's called out here, then
We did have it here. Just make sure the documentation and testing is high. I think somebody might just added it.
Yeah, well, it's there. I think that's it though. That's the biggest one that I can think.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I think I saw Mitch have a thumbs up, and let me record it. John Louis, are you good with the must-have? All right. I guess John might be stepping
Yes.
out.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just rereading to make sure nothing I missed.
Okay. Keith, are you good? Are you still there?
Yep. Everybody just do a
it.
thumbs up or thumbs down. You can just record you all.
Yeah, that would be great. Everybody, I would recommend if you have an opinion. If no opinion, I won't record you. So.
Silence is always assent.
All right. Now, should we move to? Okay, so Ben, since we already have approval, must have, I would be cautious on adding extended item unless it's like a small clarification. I just want to make sure because
Yeah, I'm trying to clarify because I think the issue is not just because if there's the question of if we go to GA and it's in a broken state so that we can't change it, that's different from we are going to get to a point where we know there's nothing else we want to do here in the short term, and then it can be GA. So that's kind of the question I want to. That's what I'm trying to point out here, right? So if we say that Helm is recommended, then Helm is not in a state where we can recommend it for GA because it's not going to be. It's not ideal, and if we change that, it won't be easy to upgrade. So I would recommend we go with Istio control in that context, which I think is a different thing because we aren't likely to change the semantics of that anytime soon.
So the actual criteria here is just that the install mechanisms are approved by the TOC and that we won't make breaking changes post GA. The last one is kind of redundant given that's what GA means, that we won't make breaking changes anymore without migration paths.
Are we going to create a situation there where we have effectively canonicalized broken shard approaches though? That's what I want to make sure we don't do.
That is, the criteria is just that we approve it. In my mind, that is the thing that I will approve as one of the many approvers, so I'm not the only approver, obviously, is the current state, personally.
Okay.
But for production use, I think Helm charts remains the best way to operate Istio, and Istio Cattle remains the best way to operate, just demo installs. I don't think we can have one without the other.
Right, and the thing is, the motivation for why I said that is that we have two install mechanisms. They are both stable, used in production by thousands of users. We're not doing anything different for Ambient. Like we have some additional knobs to give the new components, of course, like to get Z-tunnel, because that's a net new thing. But there's no radical fundamental change. So there's no way we can make breaking changes to those core things for sidecars anyways. We can incrementally improve them. We can add alternative options. Here's how you aggregate them all to make one-step Helm instead of 5.
Yeah.
Here's 2.0 API tweak to Istio Cuddle. Here's under the hood, we use more Helm stuff. All great things, but in any step of those doing them, we can't make breaking changes anyways because these are already GA. And so
yeah, I agree we can't make breaking changes. It would be nice to have fewer recommended ways and to not change the recommended way on people post GA. So if we later, for instance, consolidate charts so that they're less hassle to install, there's no upgrade path if you installed them piecemeal before to that recommended way. So I don't want to get into a situation where we can't do that because we say, oh, well, then we'll have to have a third documented way. And I don't want to get into a situation where we can't improve those charts, basically, if that's where we're at.
I
As
think-
long as
I
it's
think
backwards compatible, it's fine. But this is more
Yeah.
about documentation than compatibility. I don't want to document something that we know is not great and that we intend to change. And once we change it, the people that followed our previous documentation will be in a bind. That's what I'm pointing
Okay.
out.
So let's put that in the very nice to have then.
Fair enough.
I mean, there's no situation where we'll not have Easter Cuddle and Helm, right?
That's true, but I'm saying if they follow the Helm documentation as it is today, and then in 6 months we improve that to consolidate charts or something, or do something else.
Hold up. Let me stop you there. That's not an improvement. That's a breaking change, right? We can add a
No, not if we
method.
not if we compose. If you can
Right.
still
So
do
you
it in
can
a
add the
piecemeal
option
way.
to compose, and
Yeah.
then we are not removing the piecemeal way. We are
That's
adding
true,
an
but I don't want to get. But that's true. But what I'm saying is, I don't want to get a situation where we have basically a Helm installation page that has here are 3 ways you can install with Helm. Right. I would like it to continue to be 1, or maybe max 2 or something.
Yeah,
right?
I
don't
think
want to have too many.
like we have 2 ways to do it. They're GA. They will never go away. We can either keep those and not improve them, or we can add new ways that are improved in the future. No matter what, those are never going away. Even if we had the compose chart today, we would not remove the decompose charts either. Like that's
Right,
still the
but for
best
ambient,
practice.
For ambient, since we haven't GA'd this yet, we have the opportunity to make the ambient approach a little bit better
Right,
before
which
we do that.
with
And
our
it's a little
prior
harder
decisions,
afterwards. Yeah.
right? Which are prior decisions, we will not recommend decomposed approaches for Helm. Like there's a specific reason we decompose them, right? Was for safety, so that you
Right,
don't
but
have all the charts coupled together in one shared
Right,
page.
right. I'm not talking, but I'm saying we are not. There has been no decision about not composing. There has been decisions about not composing in a specific pattern, which that pattern could be different.
No. There was a decision about not composing. So historically, there was a decision by TOC to remove the compose. We had compose. It was decided to remove it. TOC obviously can decide whatever ones they can decide to add it back, but it was decided.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say is that no matter what, that will never go away, the decompose thing. If you want to go add a composed Helm chart, that's perfectly fine, and we can do that. If you want to do that, but also say we can only have one possible path to install, then the only solution there in my mind would just be to not add the composition. But I don't think it's true that we can only have one method for install. Like there's 1,000 methods for install. There's doing it with Argo, there's doing it with Flux, there's doing it with all these things. And I think the path we should go down is embracing meeting users where they are, and that doesn't mean having opinions. That means having integrations. So
I agree with that. I just don't want to get into a situation where we have to carry 5 different ways to do things, and people mostly widely prefer one, but we have to keep the others because we went to GA before we fixed it. That's just what I want to avoid. But anyway, we can add
the thing that is core in Istio is the building blocks, which is the decompose charts. The thing that is an ecosystem, how you want to operate, like Terraform, Flux, whatever, that's all on top. And whether we put it on our docs or someone figures it out themselves or someone blogs it on their blog, it doesn't change the fact that like there's the core and then there's the syntax around the core, right?
So I think it's reasonable for Ben to say like we should do an assessment of a composed of the building blocks to see if it can be supported as a first class thing. And if it yields a meaningful UX improvement for a class of users, then we should incorporate it. But it's additive, right? It's obviously additive.
Yes. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm 100% fine with adding, but there can be no removing. Like, these are already parts of.
Okay, so in the very nice to haves, we should add a canonicalized composed.
Can I ask a quick question before added? So, Louis, I don't know. So, what you suggest to add to the very nice to have? How is that different than the Whoop umbrella charts that Ben did, which we discussed?
We don't need to get into that necessarily.
Yeah, let's not get into the details.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just asking because I hate people to do a bunch of work and we come to the same consensus 2 weeks ago. So
let's say that nice to haves could be further simplifications of the current recommended Helm installation. I think that's not particularly controversial. How that looks, whether that involves composition or not, how the composition would work
Okay.
doesn't necessarily matter. But I'm fine with that. And I don't want to talk about
I
it
would
anymore
be
because we've spent
fine
too much
with
time. I
that.
apologize. Yeah.
Did you say it's a file in the nice to have or very nice to have? Probably
I
very
think
nice.
it probably could be very nice to have.
Yeah.
But we would need some user feedback on it, right? I think that's probably the big part. So
This goes back to some of the talk discussions too, of like users have asked for this before, and having a good response for them about why we don't do it or why we might do it but in a different way is kind of what I need to get from the talk. So
yeah, okay. I would say a simplified consumption model for the existing Helm charts. Then. Does that sound about right, Ben?
Yep.
Right.
And again, I apologize for taking up the time. Let's move on.
No, it's good.
It's always a worthy topic.
Do we have your +1 now, Ben? What's that? All right. Anything else so we are good with must have. Anything else should be very nice to have, was nice to have?
I'm just looking at the nice to have and see if any of those should be promoted. But I don't. Is the finalized decisions on supported install methods for Ambient? I think that's. I think we just. Yeah, I think we can cut that out now.
Yeah, because it's here and potentially here. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I think that partitioning looks about right to me.
If I can add one item to nice to have or very nice to have is formal documentation about protocol on the data plane and on kind of the what are the boundaries of the system basically.
So improvements to the architecture and protocol specifications documentation.
I mean, we have architecture and how we implement Ambient, how we implement Zeta, how we implement different things. No, we don't have a clear statement about what is the protocol that anyone can implement.
Oh, okay.
See, the AJ proxy or whatever is a protocol to convey metadata. I mean, what is?
Okay. So really, this is the conformance specification, right? Like doing a better job with the conformance specification.
Yes, conformance and protocol level specification. Yes.
Yeah, we have it kind of in this nice to have section. So just highlight. I mean, we can move it, but
I want to be clear, it's not describing the implementation, it's describing the boundaries. I mean, any alternative implementation could implement AJ, H2 with whatever. This is SNI, this is a host header, this is an example with curl or whatever to reproduce it. And
yeah, I mean, that level of detail is conformance custom. So let's just describe it and use the term conformance. So maybe just the first step is like publish some public conformance docs to start. Like we have a doc internally that I wrote and I need to do a lot of work on, and we punted on it. So I'm happy to go back to that and try to get that turned around.
I know one thing that I've seen users respond with, this would be like very low on a nice to have list. In sidecar mode, if you want to know if your traffic is being captured, if you've added a pod to the mesh successfully, you just go look and see if there's a sidecar injected on that pod. And you can basically trust if there's a sidecar there that it's part of the mesh. With labels, more abstract.
We've had bugs where you injected a sidecar and it wasn't capturing traffic.
But to Mitch's point, we do have this in the documentation improvements. Yeah, John.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that one word is confusing, but on the issue, we document how there is the need to verify that the mesh is used, but that there's not one definition of that, and that it's useful to have maybe 10 different ways to verify 10 different things, depending on what exactly the user wants. Like what an auditor may want is different from what a developer may want to look at, for example. So.
Very cool.
Awesome.
All right. Any other comments? I'll ship this.
Yeah, Justin Costin's one, because we don't really have improvement, just say publish.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I think there's another topic. If there's no, does anyone have any other comments on this? If not, I'd like to jump to the next topic. Stephen, it's you, right? Discuss the Ambient GA board.
Yeah, so what we kind of agreed in the chat is that we would go to the board and have labels like GA labels for the things we want in GA to track. Do we also want to have like, this is like GA must have, GA nice to have, GA
Yes.
really net, and
I
whatnot?
think that would be really good. So basically, if you don't have authority to create labels, I can create the labels for you. So basically, I think it would be really nice that we can filter by, I think right now you have ambient beta, right? So you could filter by GA or beta, and then you could do nice have or must have. That way, you know, people can easily see it. The reason, first, I don't know how to change your border to public. Secondly, I thought it might be easy to use the same border because some of the issues might already be open already. So, yeah.
Yeah, I
Don't
don't
we-
feel strongly.
Do we have priority labels already? Like we can treat P0s as must-haves, right?
Well, we have a different board where the columns are priorities,
But
but you can't. Yeah.
Okay, we don't have to check now, but let me take our notes on how we want to, and then Stephen, we can follow up on make sure it happens.
And
Yeah,
just thinking about how this was done for beta, would I be I would just look through, see what issues exist, and create the ones that don't?
Yeah, if it
Okay.
exists, reuse it. If not, just create the new ones. And if you have extra bandwidth, if you see any of the old one no longer apply, you know, feel free to close it.
Okay.
actually, on that front, on the list, if people want to put their names down for things they think they'll be working on, then that would let you know, Stephen, who you want to coordinate with.
Okay.
To figure out, like, are there linked issues you want to pull in or things like that, or just ping
Yeah,
them
or-
to say, hey, go tell them to go and add their context.
Yeah, I'll make like a skeleton, and then whoever's working on it can write it out.
So maybe, Lynn, the thing to do in the must have, not very nice to have, is to put people's names, or allow people to put their names next to them.
Oh, yes.
People to do that.
Yeah, without changing contents. Changing contents
Yeah.
would be nice. Would be good if you can bring back to maybe the next Ambient meeting or as a suggestion, so we can discuss.
You
Yeah.
just want to make issues for each of them, and then we can track the assignee on the issue.
Yeah, either way is fine, just as long as we have tracking.
Yeah.
Or we have some idea that if there's something that's not signed up for, then we need to go figure it out.
Yeah, I was going to say on that table, everything should be in the in progress section, or if we have a problem.
Yeah. Or
Wait,
soon
done.
in progress.
Already created, or they should just go into the in progress section.
Don't put in progress on them until somebody says that they're going to work on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't mean that the issue is not that they should be in the column, but is that someone should be working on them. Otherwise, we're not going to hit our timeline.
Sorry, I was taking notes. Are you suggesting maybe add a different column here?
No, I think what John was saying was all the issues should eventually go into in progress, because if they're not in progress, then they're not going to get
Oh,
done.
yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
We have only 2 months from today to do all of them, so
Yeah.
unless they're tiny, we need to get started right away.
Yeah, ideally, each person should sign up at least one item to help out. All right, awesome. Anything else we should be discussing? Stephen, is this good for you as far as the board discussion?
Yeah, and we can kind of figure it out as we go, but it gives me a good place to start.
That's great. Does anyone else have anything to discuss? If not, we can give you guys 5 minutes back. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one question. We're working with a customer who's using Istio primarily in multi-cluster mode, single network. I see the prioritization is not considering multi-cluster related in the beta or GA. So just want to understand why multi-cluster is not on top of the list.
Yeah, so I can answer that. So this list means the stuff we're going to declare GA as planned for the next release. Multi-cluster right now, I believe it's alpha or even below alpha. So we're basically saying a feature has to be beta first before they can promote it to GA. So this list doesn't mean you can't work on multi-cluster in Ambient and drive it to alpha or beta, right? If there's people interested in that, the community are welcoming for that. In fact, we also have future-proof multi-cluster API and protocol as a must-have, but we don't believe we would hold off Ambient GA for multi-cluster, to answer your question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is understood. So yeah, I was more of trying to understand Istio being primarily used in single cluster mode or multi-cluster mode. The users' interest in multi-cluster is slightly less, or is that the reason that is not tracked in the already existing list?
It's really just a matter of prioritization.
Okay.
Like Istio itself has a very large feature set, and Ambient's effectively like a new implementation. So getting all the features of Istio into the new thing is a lot of work, right? So we've been focusing on getting the core, the 80% of the work and the 20% of the time to GA.
Sure, that explains.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, so I mean, if somebody wants to and has time to work on progressing multi-cluster to alpha or beta, they're obviously welcome to do that work. I doubt they'd be able to get it to beta because it also hasn't gone to alpha yet either. But it's certainly not excluded. It's just this list is about what could go to GA within the time frame that we have available to us. Right, so it's not about intent, right? It's about practicality.
Sure, got it.
I think we may have some interest in starting some work on multi-cluster, but yeah, it wouldn't be generally available by the time that we want to go GA with Ambient. So,
yeah.
Can someone clarify what is the status of the remote gateways that I think Steve Landa or someone implemented some time ago, and the use of multi-cluster with Ambient with the other method where you create workload entries or the remote gateways? I thought it works already and it's just not documented, or what's the status? John, you probably know.
I don't know that it actually has a dedicated feature listing, so it doesn't necessarily have a feature label associated with it. It is merged and on by default and in use. In Ambient, like for sidecars, in Ambient, there's no cross-network traffic at all. So
not in multi-network. I'm saying about having the waypoint in the remote cluster be registered as a workload entry with some controller or whatever.
Yeah,
that works. I mean,
I thought you meant registering the east-west gateway in the remote.
No, not east-west. That's a waypoint.
Yeah, if you just register as a waypoint as a service entry and workload entries, yeah, that works fine.
And that's multi-network. I mean, we do support multi-network with that method. And we have multiple ways to do multi-network in Istio. Multi-cluster.
Yes,
no,
multi-cluster.
Multi-cluster.
Yeah, what's missing is yes. Yeah, you can do multi-cluster via external controller. There's just no internal multi-cluster controller yet, and there's no network gateway traversal.
Yeah. So I mean, we could, I mean, maybe that might be useful to clarify and document, like workload entry and service entry for services and workloads that are outside of the cluster will be GA, right, in the release, right? Same network.
Yeah, same network, and I think it's important to document somewhere that with the ambient model where waypoint is enforcing the policies, the enforcement must happen in the remote cluster. I mean, you cannot just use a local waypoint. I mean, if you have waypoints, at least it must be the way it is working today, where you basically talk with the waypoint in the remote cluster, which has authorization policies and everything else. It cannot be the current method where the client is just spreading traffic and without any check.
Okay, so maybe what we need is some documentation of what we used to call mesh expansion, right?
Which works, by the way.
And yeah, I mean, those are supported APIs. Those will be GA. And how people could, right? So that would belong in nice to have is documentation about how they could use those to achieve some limited multi-cluster effects. Or yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it. I'd be hesitant to call it multi-cluster custom because that has a very like automated multi-cluster versus ad hoc.
Yeah, I'd be hesitant to do anything. Like we have a API that can be used to represent things, and if you want to do that to do multi-cluster, you're perfectly fine. I'd be hesitant to even say anything about that you can do this, because then I feel like the message we're telling users is, hey, look, we support multi-cluster, just go write your own controller. And
yeah, I like that's the it'd have to be like severely cautioned. I think we already do that in some of the docs for mesh expansion, right? So I would just keep it under a mesh expansion label.
Like I don't think we need docs for someone like the Admiral team or Costin or me to go write.
Yeah, no,
like,
that
we don't need developer-facing docs of like controller authors. So.
Okay. Right, but if people are trying to say, look, I just need to consume one service and it's on the same network, right? How would they, like, just a basic usage, which I think is in the workload entry docs and service entry docs already.
But yeah, I'm fine with an example of like, here's a workload entry that's not Google.com, but is my VM or thing in my other cluster. Yeah.
Well, at least instead of saying we don't support any multi-cluster, we should say it is possible to have cross-cluster communication and point to the documentation for workload entry.
Yeah, so
I still,
just with some
I
caveats.
kind of agree with Lou and John here. Yeah, I think it's better to classify it as like external communication rather than multi-cluster.
No, it is multi-cluster. You have services in a remote cluster and waypoint remote cluster.
Well, it's like saying Kubernetes supports multi-cluster because you can make an endpoint slice, right?
Yeah, it's a bit like that.
Like, it is true for sure, but it's I don't know.
We want to be very careful, like, yeah, mesh expansion versus multi-cluster. I would just call it mesh expansion, and then you could show an example of doing it across the Kubernetes cluster boundary, just like we do with a VM. But we wouldn't like tell people this is not the same thing as the multi-cluster feature.
So have it on the nice to have, because I don't even.
And nice to have, like improvements to the mesh expansion doc for Ambient. How about that? Which you should probably do anyway.
All right. Do I have consensus on that? Anybody disagree?
I mean, nice to have is no one needs to agree. You can just go.
Right. All right.
Say I want this feature. So.
Yeah. Is you go create a PR and you submit it, and if somebody accepts it, then it happened.
All right. I think we're done. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Okay.